Today, I'll tell you a story that begins not with love but with greed. A story of family torn apart by inheritance, where every small hides a dagger and every word carries a hidden agenda. In the heart of the courtroom, the truth will be tested, loyalty will shatter, and the past will return to haunt those who thought it was buried. This is the trial of Elias Ward, a man who never asked for wealth yet finds himself standing before relatives who want him erased. Was he truly forgotten, or was he the rightful heir all along? Stay with me, because in this courtroom, every second could change a man's destiny. The story begins with Elias Ward, a 42-year-old taxi driver whose life had been defined by hardship and quiet resilience. He never sought riches, yet fate dragged him into the storm of a courtroom trial after the sudden death of his wealthy uncle Henry Ward. As Elias entered the grand courtroom, every step echoed louder than the whispers around him. Relatives who barely knew him stared with suspicion and contempt. The judge, stern and unyielding, struck his gavel and announced, "This court is now in session for the matter of Henry Ward's inheritance." The air grew heavier, greed and betrayal hung thick in the room. Clara Veyron, Elias's lawyer, rose with confidence. Her sharp eyes met the crowd as she declared, "My client is not a thief nor an outsider. He is family, and by law he has as much right to this inheritance as anyone." Gasps rippled across the courtroom. On the opposite side, Elias's cousins glared with undisguised hatred. Then the first witness appeared, the aging housekeeper of Henry Ward. She clutched her handkerchief, her voice trembling as she said, "Mr. Henry always spoke of Elias. He regretted losing touch with him. He said the boy had his spirit." The words struck Elias like thunder. Tears welled in his eyes, proof that his uncle had never forgotten him. The opposing lawyer, Victor Hale, rose from his seat. Tall and sharp-faced, his voice cut through the silence like a blade. "The defense will try to paint Elias Ward as family, but let us not forget he was absent for decades. He contributed nothing. And now, like a vulture, he arrives to claim what is not his." The words stung. Murmurs of agreement rose among the cousins, their eyes locked on Elias with venom. Elias's hands tightened on the wooden table, his knuckles white, but he said nothing. Clara Veyron did not flinch. She adjusted her glasses, then calmly laid out letters faded with age, written by Henry Ward himself. These letters proved that Mr. Henry never abandoned Elias. He wrote to him again and again. But those letters were intercepted. Gasps echoed through the room. Elias stared at the papers in disbelief. His uncle had tried to reach him all those years. The truth was slowly clawing its way out of the shadows. A sudden shout broke the courtroom's silence. One cousin, Gregory Ward, slammed his hand on the bench. "Lies, all lies. That man was never part of us." His face was red with rage, his voice cracking. The judge banged his gavel furiously. "Order. One more outburst and you will be removed from this court." Elias lowered his eyes, the storm raging around him. For the first time, he felt the weight of both hatred and hope pressing down at once. This was no longer just about inheritance, it was about survival. The judge leaned forward, his cold eyes scanning the courtroom. "If these letters are genuine, then they may alter the entire course of this case. They will be examined carefully." His voice carried authority, silencing the whispers instantly. Elias exhaled slowly, his heart racing. For years he believed his uncle had abandoned him. Now, for the first time, hope flickered like a fragile flame in the dark. Clara placed a reassuring hand on his arm, whispering, "This is just the beginning, Elias, stay strong." Victor Hale returned with venom. He strode to the center, waving another document. "Your Honor, even if letters exist, Elias never cared for Henry Ward. He never visited, never supported, never acted as family. He only appears now because there's wealth to be gained." Elias clenched his fists. His chest tightened as anger bubbled inside him, but he forced himself silent. The courtroom watched like hawks, waiting to see if he would break under the accusations. Clara rose again, her voice steady and unshaken. "Mr. Hale family is not measured by wealth or proximity. It is measured by intention, by love, and by the bonds one tries to preserve. She gestured toward the housekeeper, who nodded with troubling certainty. Elias felt his throat tighten. For years he lived believing he was unwanted. Now in this courtroom, someone was finally fighting for him. Not as an outsider, but as family. Then came a twist no one expected. Clara pulled out one last envelope, sealed and yellowed with age. This, she declared, was Henry Ward's final letter. It was never delivered, but it carries his last wish. The judge motioned for her to continue. Clara carefully unfolded the paper, her voice steady as she read aloud. To Elias, my nephew, the son I never had. If you ever find this, know that you are my rightful heir. The room erupted into chaos. Elias's cousins shouted in disbelief, their faces pale with rage. But Elias could only stare, his eyes wide, his heart pounding. His uncle's words had finally spoken for him from beyond the grave. The judge slammed his gavel, restoring order to the courtroom. Silence, he roared. The chaos died instantly, leaving only the echo of his command. He adjusted his glasses and looked directly at Elias. If this letter is authentic, then it cannot be ignored. Victor Hawley's lips curled into a snarl. He whispered something to one of Elias's cousins, their eyes darting nervously. For the first time, fear crossed their faces. Clara seized the moment. Your Honor, we request a handwriting analysis and verification of this letter. If proven genuine, it alone confirms Elias as the rightful heir. Victor shot to his feet. This is a trick, a fabrication. His voice cracked with desperation. The judge raised a hand to silence him. You will have your chance, Mr. Hale, but this court will not dismiss evidence without examination. The housekeeper, trembling, raised her voice. I saw Mr. Ward write that very letter. He sealed it himself. He asked me to send it, but I was threatened. The courtroom gasped. Threatened? The judge asked sharply. Her eyes darted toward Victor. Yes, Mr. Hale told me if I delivered it, I'd lose my home and my job. A murmur of shock rippled through the gallery. Victor's mask cracked, his hands tightened into fists, jaw clenched. Lies, she's lying. He shouted, his voice echoing across the chamber. But the crowd no longer looked at him with respect, they looked at him with suspicion. Elias watched in stunned silence. For years he thought himself powerless, yet now the truth was unraveling before his eyes. For the first time, his tormentor looked small. The judge leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. His gaze swept the courtroom. These allegations are grave. If true, they suggest deliberate obstruction of justice. Victor shifted uneasily, sweat beading on his brow. Clara spoke again, her voice unwavering. This was not just greed, Your Honor. This was manipulation, intimidation, and a theft of a man's rightful legacy. Elias felt his chest tighten. For years he had carried the shame of being branded unworthy. Now someone was speaking his truth aloud. The court clerk entered with a forensic report, placing it carefully on the judge's desk. Silence blanketed the chamber as pages were examined. At last, the judge raised his eyes. The handwriting and seal are confirmed authentic. This letter was indeed written and signed by the late Mr. Ward. Gasps filled the gallery. Elias felt his legs tremble beneath him. The truth, buried and silenced for so long, had finally surfaced. Victor leapt from his chair, slamming a fist on the table. This is a conspiracy. They forged everything. His voice was raw and hinged, but his words fell flat. The jurors exchanged skeptical looks. The gallery murmured with disdain. Clara simply turned to him, calm and steady. The truth doesn't fear the light, Mr. Hale. Only lies do. Victor's face twisted with rage, yet in his eyes flickered the unmistakable spark of panic. The judge struck his gavel once more. Enough. This trial is not about theatrics, but truth. The evidence speaks clearly. The court will recess before final deliberation. As the gavel echoed, Elias slumped back in his chair, his heart pounding. He glanced toward Clara, who gave a reassuring nod. Across the room, Victor sat rigid, his mask of control shattered. For the first time, Elias saw him not as an untouchable giant, but as a man cornered by his own lies. The courtroom reconvened after recess, the air heavy with anticipation. The jurors filed back into their seats, their faces solemn and unreadable. Elias sat with his hands clasped tightly, every heartbeat thundering in his ears. The judge cleared his throat. The jury has reached a decision. A hush fell as if the world itself paused to listen. Elias could barely breathe. For years he had been silenced, dismissed, stripped of his dignity. Now everything rested on the words about to be spoken. The foreman of the jury stood holding the slip of paper that would decide everything. His voice was firm, carrying through the chamber. Will the jury find that the inheritance rightfully belongs to Elias Ward? A gasp erupted from the gallery. Clara's eyes shimmered with triumph as she leaned toward. Elias, you did it. Justice is yours. Elias's chest heaved, tears slipping down his cheeks. For the first time in decades, his name was cleared, his worth acknowledged. Victor's face drained of color. He slumped back into his chair, the mask of arrogance shattered into dust. No arguments, no tricks remained to shield him. The courtroom no longer feared him, they pitied him. Elias rose slowly, each step deliberate, as he turned to face the judge, then the gallery. His voice, steady yet trembling with emotion, carried across the room. For years I was called a liar and a beggar. Today the truth stands. My father's name, my family's legacy, it was never stolen. It was mine all along. As he left the courthouse, the sunlight bathed his face. For Elias Ward, freedom was not just survival, it was redemption. And with Clara at his side, the road had felt brighter than he ever dared to dream. And so the trial came to an end. Elias Ward, once a man silenced by lies and stripped of dignity, walked out of the courthouse as a free man. His name cleared, his inheritance restored, his voice finally heard. Victor Hale, who built his empire on deceit, learned that power without truth is nothing more than sand in the wind. Clara Veyron's steadfast fight proved that justice may be slow, but it cannot be silenced forever. This story is not just about wealth or inheritance. It is about courage, perseverance, and the unyielding belief that truth always finds its way to the surface. So remember this: no matter how heavy the shadows, the light of truth will break through. And if you've stayed with us until the end, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful stories like this one. Your support means everything.